specialized training possible. So thank you so much to both of you for the excellent coordination. At Human Trafficking Front, we are committed to providing education and training to relevant professionals, including law enforcement and social and health service providers, as they are often among the first professionals to encounter trafficking victims, and also to the community at large. We provide tools and resources to the community to prepare all individuals in our community that can make a difference in the prevention and protection of human trafficking and in detecting signs of human trafficking in our community. As human trafficking often victimizes children, we pay particular attention to the protection of children up to the age of 18 against trafficking and exploitation in the real world and cyberspace. In Human Trafficking Front, we are included in the National Human Trafficking Hotline Directory. We are also a capacity building advocacy partner for the United Nations International Telecommunication Union on matters concerning online child protection. So I'm really honored for this opportunity to be here today. I was really looking forward to this training because of the critical role that parents and all of you in your profession play to protect children. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And I'm confident that together we will improve best interventions possible and also better responses to protect children. So with this introduction, I will proceed sharing my screen. And as Dr. Kelly mentioned, we will have question and answer session at the end. Okay, can everyone see the presentation now?
Yep, that's good.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Okay, our training today is titled Improving Child Safety on Social Media and Internet Platform. This best practices training is part of our Human Trafficking Front campaign, putting an end to the online sexual exploitation of children, preventing victimization and strengthening child protection systems. Our goal today is to share insights and resources to protect our children from evolving threats and risks related to trafficking and sex exploitation that they are facing online. So today we will enhance our understanding of some of main online risks of children in the related to trafficking. We will share strategies for the prevention of children being targeted by online predators and exploiters. And we will also share some aspects of the importance of teaching children about online privacy. For example, about the importance for children to protect their personal information, their names, passwords, and phone numbers. While the internet offers benefits and opportunities to children, for example, to stay connected with family and friends, learning new skills, play games, the internet is also being misused to engage children in exploitative situations. These cases, as you can see here in this slide, are increasing in recent years globally. We have one image being uploaded every 2 seconds per global reports. So here in the United States, we see this increase too. Internet companies, just to give you a little of background, they are legally required to report cases of child sexual abuse material or apparent child pornography to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children cyber tip line. And while the last year reports indicate here that the cyber tip line received 32 million reports, the extent of this problem is just the tip of the iceberg. The problem is huge, the one we can imagine. For example, here in this second graph that we see, we are presenting here companies with the highest volume of reports. Facebook counted, as you can see here, for more than 90% of the reports. And even though that, for example, here, TikTok is in number 7, as we indicate, this doesn't mean that they have less instances of these cases. Because companies, they apply different criteria in their processes and terms of services when they identify content or activity. So they submit different criteria where they submit reports. WhatsApp, for example, is also a huge concern. This is problematic because the number of WhatsApp reports may be higher. The fact that WhatsApp use encrypted communications present challenges to law enforcement. This number may be possibly of reports where law enforcement have a court order or subpoena in order to request the server for the information. Also for WhatsApp, the fact that the encryption communication in the server, they only store the communication for 30 days, limit the data for law enforcement for investigation further to that period, if they don't collect it in that period. So there are challenges related to the collection of evidence too. Here regarding the statistic, and I just wanted to present today the statistic that concern most to our children. The growing access to our children to the internet, increasingly at younger ages, also increase the risk of sexual victimization. We see that in recent years, based on 2022 data, 97% of teens go online. 46% of them are almost constantly online. At the same time, 1 in 9 American youth have been sexually solicited online. 57% of teens have new friends online that they don't know in real life. Approximately 70,500 individuals with sexual interests are joining cyberspace worldwide. 65% of victims are being recruited online. 70% of domestic minor victims at some point were advertised online. Here, I wanted to present to you the most common platform that children prefer in 2022. And even though Facebook have fallen here and others are becoming more attractive, this data show that the internet is definitely part of children's life. Importantly here is that the downloading apps for children have been facilitated by having access to their smartphones. And at the same time, cell phones are also facilitating a bedroom culture where they can having access anytime they want. Many children having access in a more personal way, more private, and also is concerned that even less supervised. Children and COPA. This is a very important law, especially if we have children under the age of 13. Why do most popular social media apps have a minimum age of 13? And here this relates to COPA law. The reason is COPA. COPA law make illegal for websites to track or advertise data on children under the age of 13. So for this reason, what we see now, what platforms are doing is encryption methods for children under 13. And we can see this in apps, for example, in Minecraft, Facebook Messenger Kids, that is one of the most popular, where this encrypted communication take place. And even though this resolve one problem, that is the privacy of children, is also creating problem concerning the protection of children in terms of sex trafficking. Because if a groomer or exploiter join these virtual communities and network, that illegal conduct may not be easy to detect. So, but what is child sex trafficking? To understand more the problem, to then see this problem in the context of the internet. Child sex trafficking is always illegal. This is a crime prohibited by law in the United States and around the world. Victims and children in this case, they are under the control of the trafficker through a combination of factors, usually fear, intimidation, and psychological control. Through these forms, children, that is any person under the age of 18, are being exploited and also sold as community. And now this crime is also happening in cyberspace. By law, the TVPA, that is the main trafficking law in the United States, also defines child sex trafficking. Child sex trafficking, as you can see here, occur when a trafficker recruits, transports, provides, advertises, solicits, obtains, or maintains a child under 18 for the purpose of a commercial sex act. What is a commercial sex act? It's any sex act on account of which anything of value is given to or received by any person. This can be the child or any person. Usually, traffickers, they meet needs of children. That can be tangible needs or intangible needs. That can be attention, love, shelter, money, food, clothes. So once a child is induced to a sexual activity in exchange of something of value, that is a victim of human trafficking, or we can raise that claim. No force, fraud, or coercion is needed for child sex trafficking cases. However, that is a requirement. The means element is a requirement for understanding adults trafficking. Technology and child sex trafficking. How child sex trafficking happens in the internet, and what is happening right now. Traffickers have demonstrated adaptability to internet services to facilitate the crimes and exploitation of minors. Today, we see that all stages of the trafficking process are happening online. The actus reus of trafficking, that is the recurring, transferring, harboring, receiving of a child, happens online, and so as the exploitation, that is the purpose of trafficking, can also be happening in cyberspace. So if we understand trafficking as a process that a person is brought to a situation of exploitation, that can happen in cyberspace, and we can see that in situations involving online recruitment or advertising of minor for prostitution, for example. And also we see that cases of trafficking extend when someone is maintained in a situation of exploitation. And that is important because for trafficking to occur, we don't need movement, travel, or transportation of victims. And I also wanted to bring that to this training because usually there is a misperception that the victim needs to be moved for trafficking to happen. And that is not a requirement. We see that in the elements of the Trafficking Act here that can be harboring or receipt of someone. Coercion. Even though the means elements are not a requirement for minors, coercion is a formidable means to induce a minor into trafficking offline and online. We see, for example, that trafficking creating minors and on adults also a situation of dependency to the point that that minor or that person feel that doesn't have any other choice just to submit to the abuse and exploitation. So it's coercion is a wonderful means to control and exploit children online. But where online trafficking crimes are committed, and I wanted to bring this special slide today because all this represents cyberspace. Traffickers are using the surface web, that is the internet that we use on a daily basis, for example, social media platforms to groom children, advertisement websites, classifies, ads, for example, to promote victims, coordination of services in the surface web. But also there is a portion here that is the dark web, that is a subsection of the deep web that they are using to exploit children. And the most severe and images and videos of children are being traded in this environment here. Tor is one of the most popular software. However, we can also see Freenet, and there are others that they are using. Here in the dark web, we can also see that financial gain from these images can be accomplished through cryptocurrencies as a way of payment. And also the live streaming of severe forms of abuse and exploitation of minors are also occurring here. I had a few months ago a training for law enforcement, the National Colombian Police, and they were sharing with me some cases occurring there of auctioning victims in the dark web. So they are using traffickers, the entire cyberspace ecosystem for online sex trafficking purposes, as you can see in this slide. So, but what is online child sex trafficking? Online child sex trafficking, and for you to have an idea of how big the problem is a group of criminal activities that are intended for the purpose of exploiting children. The types of online child sex trafficking here are not the only one that exists. However, these are the main concerns for us here in the United States, and that's why we selected these practices to share with you today. But these practices may differ by country. These practices may go from online grooming of children, that is a concern here in the United States, and also for other countries, concerns can be, for example, the online facilitation of child marriages for exploitation purposes, illegal adoption of children for exploitation purposes. Those practices are also in this umbrella and can be facilitated online and be a concern for other countries. Sexting. Even though sexting is not a practice, exploitation practice per se, this practice is a risk for children. And that's why I wanted to bring that today. Teens are increasingly considering sexting as a normal practice, and they may not be aware of the risks related to abuse and exploitation. Even though not all teens are involved in sexting, per data, only 17% of children are the one involved in sexting. It is essential for us to educate our children on the potential consequences and gravity of spreading images of others and of oneself produced out of sexting. Also, it's essential for us as parents to share with children that in a healthy relationship, the other party doesn't need to request anything to put you at risk or request harmful demands on you. So on the importance to remember on children about not sharing. Online grooming. The internet have opened a new ways for groomers that are exploiters to connect with and solicit children for sexual purposes. Online grooming relates to trafficking because it involves an exercise of control over children for sexual purposes. This is a concern for us. That grooming can happen in a matter of minutes. And through grooming, traffickers intend to develop a sexual relationship with a child in order to produce sexual images of that child or allow sexual images to be taken of that child or also to meet the child offline. But this is also a concern that some research also has shown that even though the exploiter live close to the child when grooming occurs, many of them prefer to remain the exploitation online instead of meeting the child face to face. So due to the gravity of grooming behavior of children, I present you here some tips for talking to children to keep them safe online. Children, it's important to teach them to say no online. And remember that traffickers prey on children's vulnerabilities. They exercise psychological control over the children and manipulation tactics. So it is essential that children know that they need to say no when these situations may be happening to them. Traffickers also can target many teens at once. Child sexual abuse material and child sexual exploitation material. Child sexual abuse material or child pornography, that is the way that we know this practice, involve the use of children in explicit sexual activities or any representation of the sexual parts of a child for sexual purposes. Here at Human Trafficking Front, we recommend avoiding the use of the term child pornography. And this is because this term, child pornography, can be misleading or insinuate that the child could consent to this practice, and children cannot consent to child sexual abuse materials. And so in that way, we cannot allow that the undermining the gravity of this action or switching the blame onto the child for these situations. Also a concern is child sexual exploitation material. Child sexual exploitation materials are exploitative material of children, but they not always met the legal threshold of child pornography or child sexual abuse material. However, in these cases, it is essential for us to see the intent of the perpetrator. The perpetrator intention is to exploit a minor. Also a concern here is computer-generated or virtual child pornography, computer-generated child sexual abuse material, and child sexual exploitation material. And I wanted to bring this in a special way tonight because these material are not of a real harm to a child. It's not any real harm being harmful. However, these material are being used in the process of sexually exploiting children. This material can cause in viewer the same effect as if they were watching real children. So, and that is something important for us to have in mind, especially in cases of investigations and prosecutions. This material, for example, can be used in the process of grooming children, can be used in the process to cultivate the demand for trafficking and exploitation of minors, and also to enable a culture of tolerance for the sexualization of children. So it's very important to know the effect of these images in the viewers. Also, there is a strong link between watching images and committing sexual crimes against children if the perpetrator meet the child in real life. A concern is especially in the dark web, and we saw in a previous slide, is, for example, 89% of children victims of child sexual abuse material are between ages 3 and 13. Also, as more severe the abuse, more severe is the abuse, the age of the children is even younger. Also, the most severe forms of abuse are for boys. Even though for child sexual abuse material and child sexual exploitation material, the permanent victimization is on girls, the more severe abuse is on boys. Extortion. This is a prevalent concern today related to trafficking, and is one of the new forms of victimization. This involves when an offender blackmails a child into sending more sexual material or being filmed performing sexual acts. So what happened with sending a photo get out of control, and the child is receiving threats regarding that otherwise the photo, the image, the video is going to be shared to others, for example, on social media, something like, hey, if you don't do this, then I will do this. So it's very important for us as parents to share with children a message that the compromising images of them can be used against them. Live streaming. Live streaming, this is also part of the new offenses of trafficking occurring online. Live streaming, this as the others, is an offense that there is no hands-on act. And this offense is very important now because it involves different countries. For example, there is one party that is involved in recording a minor in one country, and there are also viewers of the abuse of that child at distance. We have seen cases, for example, that parents, especially in developing countries, have been using this modality of crimes as a way to make money or extra income, because they feel that it's not involving a real harm to a child because it's at distance. The abuse occur remotely. However, this is a form of child sexual exploitation. And also for the investigation of this crime, it's important to know that sometimes there is no evidence because nothing was recorded and nobody possessed any file. So there is no possessors of child sexual abuse material, the performing video that children were doing, because after the abuse is done, they end up the session. So there is no evidence of what happened to a child. So who can be online sex traffickers? And I wanted to bring this up today also because it's also a myth that some people can be a traffickers and others cannot be traffickers. Anyone can be a traffickers. And we can see that in some new modality of the crime, also involving parents and family members that are the people that the child trusts most. So anyone can be a trafficker. And we see here in the motivations, for example, Some traffickers are primarily motivated by the sexual interest in children and financial gain of what is happening. And also we see parents, for example, in the live streaming of child sexual abuse. So anyone can be a trafficker. Who can be the children victimized? These children are real victims. Even though the victimization now of child sex trafficking is occurring as in the street, but also occurring in cyberspace. These are real children that many of them may be still living in their houses, in their home, with their parents, and are being victimized online. Because this, and I wanted to summarize here the way that children may be sexually victimized in cyberspace. They may be recipients of illegal content, participants of commercial sex acts online, and also actors when they create images, but there is something behind them, a trafficker or exploiter that is manipulating them to or inducing them to these forms of abuse and exploitation. Risk factors. And this slide is especially for children and for us as parents, because there are two types of vulnerabilities, or this is the way that I see the vulnerabilities, because traffickers exploit vulnerabilities in children. The age is an intrinsic vulnerability factor. The age of the child, that is the main pre-existing vulnerability. But also we see, for example, a history of sexual abuse, past abuse, for example, children in foster care, children with family problems. These create vulnerabilities that traffickers will use to manipulate children into online trafficking. And also there are vulnerabilities that are created by the traffickers. For example, traffickers can offer children once in a life opportunity, job opportunity, romantic relationship, and emotional attachment. And those vulnerabilities created by the traffickers also lead children into sex trafficking online. This is very important because it's the legal irrelevance of consent. And I wanted to bring here these words that are being articulated by Jean Kuna. She was the technical advisor on migration and trafficking, and also the author of a report that the Trafficking Women and Girls in 2002. This report is important because our main trafficking law, the TVPA, started in 2000. So at that moment, at that year especially, we can see the spirit of the law, of the intention of the law. And that is well articulated in these sentences that she said. This is a shared understanding of childhood here, and this, that they are in the formative stages, children, of their physical, sexual, emotional, and cognitive development. This is the reason, or part of the reason why there is inclusion of a special provision for children in the Palermo Protocol, that is the main law addressing trafficking at the international level, and our TVPA, our main trafficking law. So the consent of a child per law over the trafficking protocol and the TVPA is legally irrelevant for trafficking and exploitation. And children can never consent to any form of their own sexual exploitation, of sexual abuse. They can never consent, either offline or online. This is important to know the warning signs. The warning sign, because children often don't disclose their victimization. They don't disclose what happened to them because they have been manipulated by our traffickers, because of the psychological coercion over them that a trafficker exercise, or because they feel shame, guilt, as a result of the exploitation. So this is critical for us as parents and our a key role to prevent trafficking and exploitation. To be familiar with some of these indicators here, that these are indicators of that children may be having when they are victim of grooming or online trafficking. The severe and long-term trauma. Trafficking, especially sex trafficking on victims, has devastating consequences for children. These actions have long-lasting physical and psychological trauma. And I said here physical because as you can see here in this slide, some children have been with suicidal attempts and also committing suicide because of the victimization that they suffer in cyberspace. This victimization of the harm of children is also ongoing. Why? Because anything that you share online is likely to be there or have a permanent record. So the victimization never ends for them. And also in some cases, it can be even more harmful than the actual abuse. So the victimization can be as severe as of those cases as those who suffer offline sexual abuse, and may last during the entire life, even if they go into the adulthood. This I wanted here just to summarize the main challenges and how these challenges occurring worldwide through network are being bringing new challenges to law enforcement. The extent of this point, we don't know yet. There are difficulties to find location of predators and victims. The loss of data, the retention of data may create challenges, for example, for the collection of evidence. The fact that organized crime groups are involved in these practices are also a huge concern for law enforcement. The difficulties of tracking the location, the process of taking down requests that is dealing with internet services provider is also sometimes causing some delays. So all these, the virtual payment, the cryptocurrencies facilitating the financial gain of traffickers, all these create difficulties when we identify human trafficking and sex trafficking in cyberspace and also in the real world. And we saw before some actions occurring online, but facilitate trafficking in the real world. So what to do when a child is become a victim of online sex trafficking? It is important to reinforce to the child that it is not the child's fault, that the trafficker, the online trafficker or predator, those are the criminals in what occurred to a minor, and the consent of a minor is legally irrelevant to what happened to them. And this is really important instead of criminalization, because sometimes the minor maybe feel that they were the one with the guilt of what occurred to them. But it's important to report that the responsibility rely on that adult trafficker or exploiter. The assistance and support is essential for us to reinforce that to children that they have the right to be protected from harm online. Children have the right to be protected from trafficker, from human trafficking, that is a severe civil right violation, and they are entitled to protection. And some children may be having severe trauma and may require services. And that is essential also that what we do, the prevention response, also be in harmony or in line with services provider that need to be ready to assist children when they are victimized online and offline with trafficking threats. So these are some tips also for keeping children safe online. talk to your children. It is essential that we talk to our children about online safety. This is a concern, and I wanted to bring that in this slide. Some children are visiting sites that are for adults, and that is also important for us to see that the internet is a universe open with so much information and so many things that for children to explore, but maybe this may be related to risks related to trafficking. So what site they are visiting, the online friends that they are having, they shouldn't having online friends if they are not people that they trust in offline. For example, the fact of sharing inappropriate content, requesting inappropriate content, the consequences for doing that, also privacy, what information need to be keeping private. And for us as parents, as professionals, I applaud you in this effort for this training, because we have to stay informed. And we have also to be able to think outside of the box, as I said in some of my training to law enforcement, because we also think that sex trafficking is just happening on the street as brothels, and this is happening online. This is happening to our children in our houses. And children may be still wearing the same clothes, maybe showing no sign of sexual exploitation, and might be victimized of human trafficking. So if you suspect trafficking, what you need to do or what a child needs to do, and this is a clear 3-step response for children to have clarity. It is essential that they block or unfriend, tell someone, especially a parent of a trusted adult, and report. Where report? You need to report to the tech platform, you need to report to the cyber tip line, and you need to report to local law enforcement of what happened. Either if that is content or inappropriate activities, both of them need to be reported. So recommendation today, we have to stay informed of what is happening online and offline, because what happened online is also being reflected offline. And we see, for example, some modality of crimes connect the real world and cyberspace. Due to vulnerability, most of children, and that happen in general with victims of human trafficking, they don't identify as victims of a crime. So it's essential for us to detect the signs of victimization in children. It is essential also to advocate, and we do that in human trafficking front. We advocate for a stronger legislation. We advocate for an effective protection of new modality of crimes. We advocate, and we invite you to do so, for the protection of children up to the age of 18 against trafficking and exploitation. And we need definitely, at this crime connect the virtual world and the real world, we need a common understanding of jurisdiction of what is happening, so it can facilitate the collection of evidence as well. Report is essential to know where to report. This is the number of the cyber tip line, and you can also make the reports online. And this is the number of the National Human Trafficking Hotline. This is the last slide. Thank you for your time. This is also my book. It's a resource for understanding human trafficking in the context of the internet, slavery, how slavery connect to trafficking, and how traffickers are using the real world and the internet to exploit minors. So thank you so much. And I would like to hear some questions or comments. So thank you again. And that is my email, and also you can reach out anytime. And we are also very involved in the community. So thank you so much, and looking forward to continue join forces with One Miami Church to to combat human trafficking and sex trafficking of minors, also facilitated online. So thank you.
Thank you so much. And as Dr. Beatriz said, we are now going to open it up for questions. And if you wouldn't mind, I'd like to ask you if you could put it that the second to last slide with the numbers of where to report.
Okay, 1 second. Let me share the screen.
Just for folks to take note of that.
Yes, 1 second.
So please feel free to, you can write your question in the chat or you can use your mic so we can open it up for questions. Somebody has a question.
Yes, this is the slide where you can see where to report. Here in this number, be aware that the National Human Trafficking Hotline, Human Trafficking Front, we are part of the Human Trafficking Hotline as we provide indirect services, prevention, and resources to the community and professionals. Here is for all modalities of human trafficking, sex trafficking, and labor trafficking. And this one, the cyber tip line, is more for online child sexual exploitation and instances of child sex trafficking online.
Thank you. I don't see any questions, but I'll go ahead since I have the floor. When I was reading your book, you had mentioned about how these sex traffickers use video games for children to groom them and to allure them. Could you elaborate a little bit on that, since video games are so prevalent?
Thank you. Absolutely. And that is a great question, Dr. Kelly. Here, what we see, for example, with the video games and the grooming process, in particular, the offense of grooming, is that starts with a simple chat or a simple message like, hey, how are you? And they start like seeing the trafficker start evaluating the needs of the child. And they start meeting that need that the child may have. And after that, the trafficker explore the needs of the child. Usually what they do is that they move the conversation from that platform to another. And that is something that we need to keep in mind also when we explain to our children about what is happening in a friendly way for they to understand. Because the traffickers, after they target that child, they move the conversation to another platform where they can have more privacy in their conversation. And they develop that sexual relationship with the child. And if that conversation is moved to an encrypted platform, for example, if the minor at that trafficker that perhaps is thinking that is another child, adding that child, but it's not a child, it's the trafficker, for example, to Facebook Messenger for kids, then there will be no way for us to detect what is going on. And maybe the minor may be thinking that traffickers have an emotional connection, or is a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and that sexual relationship that has been created and moving from one platform to another is trafficking in cyberspace. The minor is being maintained a situation of exploitation. And there is a trafficker exploiting that minor during the sexual conversations, that is grooming, for sharing materials, that is also grooming, linked to trafficking, and also the child may not think that is being recorded, and may be being recorded while performing commercial sex acts for that another child that may be a trafficker. And all that is being facilitated, or the initial meeting was facilitated through gaming systems and gaming technologies.
Thank you for elaborating on that. Yeah, that was something that was really new to me, how the use of video games is so prevalent. I'm just reading the chat. Yeah, Kelly brings up a point. Yeah.
There's people that has hand
Sure.
raised.
I'm looking for, sorry, for some reason I can't see who has their,
It's
if you have your
Kelly
hand.
Gilchrist
Kelly
Please go ahead.
and Ione.
and Alfonso.
I just had a quick question. Thanks for your time. When you said that sex trafficking is increasing there in Florida, I'm new to Florida and I'm just curious, what are the statistics? Because looking online, you know, it's kind of skewed. I was wondering if I could get it straight from you, the source. You can kind of open our eyes to it so we can be more aware that, you know, it's not just onesies or twosies, but it's actually in the thousands. I'm really curious on the statistics, if you can share that with us. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you. Absolutely. Florida ranked number 3rd nationwide, and that is a huge concern for human trafficking. We are only, the first is New York, California, and then Florida. So we are the 3rd one. And also a huge concern regarding data is the fact that the 3 main forms of severe form of trafficking are, that is defined by the TVPA, our main trafficking law, at the federal level, occur in Florida. And that is also a huge concern. And I bring that up in our trainings, especially for law enforcement. We have here the 3 prevalent forms. We have here sex trafficking of adults that is being also facilitated online. Even in Backpage and other major websites have been removing the ads related to sexual purposes. Traffickers always find a way to do it. So we have here sex trafficking of adults being facilitated online, especially for advertising, and also the coordination of the services between the demand and the traffickers. We also have here domestic minor sex trafficking that is also facilitated online. That is the emphasis of today for us as parents. And we also have here prevalent labor trafficking. Labor trafficking is a huge concern for us. For example, we see that in the agricultural industry, we see that in the tourism industry, in the field. And that is also a huge concern involving migrant people that may be victimized for labor trafficking purposes. So yes, we are number 3rd in nationwide.
Thank you. Alfonso, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much for this eye-opening presentation. One question that I have was in reference to, I've heard before that most of these traffickers of children, they use hotels to move the children around. And what would you recommend, or what would you say we could look at, for example, if we're suspicious of somebody with a child, that the child's not happy, or, you know, it doesn't seem like they're with their parents, or maybe with a stranger, but the child's not saying anything. You might be in the elevator, you say hello to the child, and the child is just looking very strange, you know. It's just a suspicion, but you don't know what's going on. Are there any pointers?
Thank you. Yes.
Recommend?
Thank you. That is an important question now, because now in Florida, our governor, we have now a new law in Florida, and that law relates to hotels and motels. For that reason that you mentioned, that law require our hotels and motels in Florida to educate staff, all of the staff in hotel, about identifying signs of sex trafficking, and in particular matter, child sex trafficking, because of what you say, because people working in the hotel, and even a person that go to hotels, we need to be able to recognize signs. And that is the campaign that the hotels with our governor and that law are going to start. We are planning with some of our partners start doing prevention campaigns with hotels here at Human Trafficking Front for the same reason. As we did today with the training, sharing tips and resources on how to identify online trafficking and sex trafficking of minors. They need to be able to identify in the special settings when there is a child that may be a victim, be able to report and also be able to connect with law enforcement. And that is my recommendation. My recommendation to your question is they need to be able to work together in partnership with the local law enforcement and be able to recognize the sign that what is going on. For example, if there is a minor in a room that haven't relieved the room, if there is no requesting services for days, if you don't know who is there, is the person in the room enter for behind and not the front door of the hotel. So what is going on? All that things, I think that new law that we have in Florida, thanks to our governor, will help for that purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amanda has a question, Amanda Stewart. The question is, when reporting a suspected trafficking incident, let's say in a family, how do we ensure the safety of the child if the trafficker and family member are in agreement for the exchange?
Are in agreement of the exchange, the traffickers and the family member?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes, exactly. That is what we see, or the challenges that we see in some of the forms of human trafficking online. And that is the reason that, for example, the live streaming of child sexual abuse is lower in reports because the parents is involved in the abuse. And most of the kids, they're unable to do the reports. And what happened behind those closed doors in that home, nobody knows. So that's why it's very important what we did today. And also this type of training to be shared with the schools, so if the child speak with somebody else, we can be able to recognize signs, teachers, educators, the community, professionals serving minors. We can be able to recognize signs because in some modalities, the person that the child trusts most is the one that is selling the child to a trafficker. And by facilitating that trafficking, that facilitator is also an exploiter, because anyone who is part of the trafficking process is considered a trafficker per law, the definition of human trafficking per the definition at the federal level.
Thank you. I'm looking to see, there was another question here. The difference between sex trafficking and slavery.
There are differences that you can see also in my book. There are differences. Just to explain you in simple words, in order for us to claim that there is a slavery, a case of a slavery, there need to be an exercise of an element of power over that person. If we can write that claim that there is an exercise of ownership over that person, we can write the claim that that person is considered a modern slave. In the past, slavery was the jure ownership over a slave. I have a title and I have property rights over someone. Today, no. Today is a de facto ownership of someone. We can see that in order to exemplify very quickly in branding. We see, for example, people victims of sex trafficking that have tattoos with names or Mara Salvatrucha in signs. Those may be type of branding, and those branding may represent possession, for example.
Wow. I want to share something that Derek Gamble wrote, that there's a technology where people can use a program to disguise their voice as a child while gaming.
Yes, and that is what I wanted to present in one of the slides, and thank you for mentioning that. because those are realistic representation of children, either audio or either a representation of unrealistic minor, I mean, not a real minor, computer generator, or we see that in sex dolls and things that want to represent the voice of the minor or a minor, but is not a real minors. But we have to be aware that those images and those audio data, those are being used in the process of sexually exploiting children, and they can promote the demand. They can, as we were discussing, they create in the viewers that if they were victimizing a real child. So it's very important to keep the intention of exploitation in those elements, in those materials.
There are two hands up, Kelly.
Sure. Okay, let me,
Campus students.
okay. Thank you. Please. Oh, I see the hands.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to ask what the role of our church is in all of this. Practically, are we gonna partner with? I guess maybe also James, you can answer this too. If we're partnering with this organization, are we gonna be helping them in some way? Are we starting a program? What are we doing practically? And yeah.
Sorry, I didn't understand the entire question. Can Dr. Kelly please repeat to me, please?
I'll do my best. I'm piecing it together. Was the question, are we going to be continuing this partnership in activities in the future and events? Was that the question?
Yeah, kind of. What is the role of our church in this whole thing? If you want to help out or something like that, what are we gonna do as a church? And if you're a member of the church, so.
Yeah, I think that you did just for this invitation a huge step forward, that you are making a real difference. If we analyze this effort, I think it's tremendous, because awareness and prevention is one of the pillars of the response. And if we are not educated, we cannot respond. One of the role of human trafficking from the community is to enhance the response capacity of our communities. And we are privileged by our partnership with onemiamichurch, because what we are doing is increasing awareness. We are sharing our material, our evidence-based resources with you to continue in your house, in your profession, in your college, to continue raising awareness, educating others on what is going on, not only offline, but also online. So I'm sure the chart leaders can guide more on this, but I applaud in this effort, because I think it's really impressive, and thank you again.
Thank you. I've also put in the chat the organization Human Trafficking Front, if you want to reach out to them, and on campus, perhaps you can set up a workshop there on campus for students, and we can talk about how we can partner in the future. I see Magali, you have a question, and
Thank
also
you.
Melissa Bias has a question. So go ahead,
Yes.
Magali. I think you had your hand first.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Dr. Uitts. That was a great presentation. I learned a lot. One question that I had to do with children being groomed to become traffickers. Are there any sign that you can give us that we can look for? Like, for example, when that's being done by another child of their own age?
Yes, and that is also very important. By a statute here in Florida, and that is also an international principle, that is more intense when you study trafficking laws and regulations. There is a statute a law that encapsulate the principle of no punishment of victims. And that is also very important, especially, for example, for law enforcement, because they immediately may think that everyone involved, and that happened, for example, in cases of a street prostitution, commonly, that they immediately think that they are criminals. And they may be a victim of someone, for example, that is establishing quotas for them to meet, someone behind them that is making money over the commercial sex act of them. So based on that principles, minors, in terms of minors are protected by law. So minors, one exploiter, they are victims of trafficking and exploitation. And the law is clear on the protection of minors up to the age of 18. And when there is an adult victim, we have to be very careful to analyze the circumstances. Is that person, for example, commit an offense during the course of human trafficking, during the course of their victimization, they were coerced for doing that offense, that victim need to be protected from that offense, because they were forced for doing something against their own free will.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a question about using deep fakes. Is deep fake technology becoming more common in sex trafficking cases?
You mean with deep fake when it's unrealistic, no real children, or where exactly?
I'm not sure. Melissa, if you want to explain that the angle you were taking in that question, or just in a general sense, are sex traffickers utilizing deep fake technology?
Yeah, so my question was really in regards to deepfake technology in general has become more and more prevalent in our society, where images supposedly of maybe one person are then interpolated or put on another person's body. And so my concern is that maybe this is also being used in regards to children, maybe to further exploit them with images that are not true of them, but are made to look like they are them.
Yes, and we see that, for example, in cases of representation of minors. No, a real minor, as you said, that is part of the category of virtual child pornography, where there is no a real minor, or maybe an identified minors, or maybe the face of the minor and different bodies. So all that can be in the category of unrealistic minors, but again, to the point, we have to be aware that all those images that are representing a minor or digitally created minors, all that are being used in the process of sexually exploiting children, even though they are not harming a real child. And that is also one of the arguments. Sometimes people think, but there is no harm to a child, so there is no offense. But we have to see the context of the intention of the perpetrator when using the images. And trafficking law, starting at the international level to Florida statutes, federal level, and all 50 states have trafficking law, is clear that trafficking is for the purpose of exploitation, for the purpose of commercial sex act. So we have to see the intention of the perpetrator when analyzing the context of those exchanges. Most of the exchanges happen in the dark net, and you can see also the intent of the perpetrator that is reflected, for example, when they are creating self-help communities, when they are exchanging advices, when they are exchanging tips of where to go if they travel to another country to facilitate child sex tourism, for example. All those advices, all those trading of images, exchanging images representing minor, of the minors themselves. So all that pieces together bring you elements for trafficking and exploitation.
Thank you. I see a hand up. Arl.
Sean.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
That's okay.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. My name is Sean. I'm part of the South Community family. I just wanted to touch in. I work for TSA and Homeland Security, and I'm in the airport. And TSA has allowed me to share our training curriculum for our behavior detection officers, which will definitely highlight and give people better tips, what to be aware of, what to be more visually aware of. So just to touch on what Alfonso was asking earlier, you know, it's a curriculum that I'll coordinate with John so that we can get that out to everybody. That way you can pretty much see what it is we look for in the federal government aspect and how we're trying our best to really go after, you know, these criminals. So, and like I said, I'll coordinate with John. That way we can get this training curriculum out and maybe do another webinar and, you know, have everybody see this as well.
Thank you. I think that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, especially for the role that you play in the airport. It's essential to identify some signs of the situation of trafficking. And just very briefly, for example, to mention to all of you tonight, we see, for example, in those cases, in particular at airport, for example, that trafficking is the understanding of trafficking as a way where there is a country that is sending the person or is where the person is being recruited, and there is another country that is the United States where that person is received for commercial sex acts. So we can see the clear stratification of countries in those cases that are international. There is a country where the victim is being recruited. There may be some cases, a country where the victim is in transit, and there is a country where the victim is the destination where the victim is going to be exploited. And how we need to also the importance in those cases to work in coordination with international agencies, because it's not only here the receipt of the person, but also we need to see the chain, how that person was recruited and by who, because they probably gonna be more people that are gonna be sent to the recipient country. So all that intricacies of the different modality of crimes that trafficking is a huge umbrella that is trafficking. So thank you, and of course, an honor. We are always ready to help in the community. So thank you so much.
I'll end here. I don't want to end, but I know that it's getting late, but I wanted to read a comment and then one last question, if I can find it. Rosie Alejandro wrote, kids and teens get groomed and then they start trafficking other kids, like in high school. They befriend other teens and then lure them in. I don't know if you want to elaborate on that. And the last question here was, how often are individual perpetrators and or groups and organizations caught and prosecuted? So those are the comment, if you want to elaborate, and the last question from Kina.
Yes, the first comment, yes, absolutely. That is one of the modalities of recruitment, and it's very common. That is understood as peer recruitment. Peer recruitment is a modality of child sex trafficking, usually where there is a minor that is induced by a trafficker to recruit other minors. And that is why it's important to raise awareness of sex trafficking in the school system. So minors can be aware to identify what is going on. Sometimes, for example, and that is something that we do in our training, for example, for law enforcement. We have an activity when our trainings allow in time, especially when we visit them in their facilities, we do an activity where there is a peer recruitment case and that minor visited the other minors and recruited from their homes and take it to another city. So, and that happened in real life. And we think that no, but my kids went to another kid, and that kid is acting on behalf of trafficker and is doing peer recruitment. So all those signs, we as parents, we need to recognize. And the other comment, I'm not sure if I understood correctly, is saying that how frequently traffickers are being caught, prosecuted?
Prosecuted, yeah, prosecuted.
Yes, yes. I think that police is doing an excellent job in identifying trafficking crimes and protecting victims. I think is that we need to do more, especially if that the trafficker is a crime that can happen in clandestine places and also in high visible places. We need to be able to recognize signs in restaurants, signs in places that we often on a daily basis can visit and we don't know. So those things are also challenges for law enforcement because what can be a normal situation may be a situation of trafficking. We did about a couple of years ago a training to a bank. And we were in the context of the banking system. In that training, we were sharing signs of how to recognize trafficking in the banking system because victims can be freely moving from one place to another. Have we presented today in this training psychological means of coercion? Also the Stockholm syndrome. Sometimes victims feel emotional attachment to the trafficker. So all those things are part of the trafficking and lure victim to remain in exploitation situation and are difficult to detect sometimes.
Very good. Thank you, everyone. If you are interested in passing on the information, we're going to be meeting next week in Spanish. So this whole training will be in Spanish. Which is so important here in Miami. I want to thank everyone for staying on and asking questions, participating. Thank you so much, Dr. Beatriz. This has been really eye-opening once again. Thank you for your expertise. We applaud the work you're doing in our community.
Thank you. A true honor for Nikki and for me to be here today to join forces with you. And thank you for thinking of us. Thank you, and we're ready to continue joining forces and see you all. And pastors, thank you for the beautiful prayer at the beginning. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and see you all next week for the Spanish session. So thank you all.
Thank you,
Kelly, thank you, Dr. Beatriz. That was wonderful. You really open our eyes for this matter so important in of so much concern here in Miami, especially. I would like to thank you everybody that is here. I know that there are people that are in groups, in community groups, also the campus student that I don't know if they are here, still they're here. But anyway, if you are in community group, if you could let hear the number of people in your group, let hear in the chat, just for matters of report the number of people that are watching, that are here present in this training. I will